Hi, I'm Alex Archman. I've been buying and selling antiques since I was a kid. Over the years, generations of our family have gotten involved in the business, and I'll search just about anywhere I can to find hidden treasures both big and small. I never know what I'll turn up next. It's about exploring new places, seeing new sights, and having fun. And even though sometimes I get over my head, we try and make things a little better along the way. This is Curiosity. Today I'm in Naples, Italy, and I'm on my way to visit the historic coastal city of Herculaneum, which was buried by volcanic ash and debris in the year 79 AD, and some say it's the better preserved of the ancient cities between Pompeii and Herculaneum. It was a massive coastal city, not quite as big as Pompeii, but big nonetheless. It was uncovered by accident when they were digging a well, and they found what ended up being the main theater. Excavations began in the 17 and 1800s, and today only 75% of the city or the town site has been uncovered, so there's still lots that we don't know. But I'm excited to see it. It's been on my bucket list for a long time, and we're also going to explore the Naples Museum after, so follow along today as we make some explorations and see this ancient Roman city. We've arrived at the car park for Herculaneum. Now they tell me that only 25% of Herculaneum has been uncovered because they've actually built this whole town, the modern Herculaneum, on top of the site. So most of it's buried, and it's probably pretty unlikely they'll be able to get to the rest of it because, well, frankly, you'd have to knock down all these people's houses. But the area that is excavated, which was more of a residential seaside town, is accessible. And we're gonna go there now. Our first views of Herculaneum, you can just see how low it is compared to the rest of the landscape because it was buried underneath 60 feet of volcanic ash. But surprisingly, many of these buildings still retain their second floors and have the roofs on them, so much better preserved. So if they were to continue digging underneath all these apartment buildings and houses, they'd find much more of the city. In fact, probably right underneath our feet, right below us, would be more of the town that's not been uncovered. But we'll take in and enjoy what we can and take a wander through the ancient town of Herculaneum. You kind of get the scale and the scope. What's so interesting to see, they had the rooftop patios and gardens and structures and even complete roads that ran along the top of the structures. So we've got to go down the pathway and back around. Luckily, it's a beautiful day here today, so it should make for a nice walk down. We can view the piazza, and some of the original statues are still in place. And if you look all the way up, you can see Vesuvius in the background there. It's much taller. It's missing about that much height, but that's what caused all this. So what's interesting before we get down, and we're going to be down there right away, is that all these little buildings along the front, this was oceanfront. And all the doors that are open down there, those were places where they could store and work on their boats. And if you look behind me, you can't even see the ocean. It's so far away now. It's miles away. That is all volcanic ash that's filled in. And look how high up we are too. This gives you a sense of how much ash landed here all those many years ago. Very short. Oh, there we go. Niche frescoes up top. Just kind of peeking inside the back of the villa. And somebody asked if this was water, and in some cases they would have actually had dirt in here and grown plants indoors. So the one difference between Pompeii and Herculaneum is that Herculaneum actually had a sewage system. In Pompeii, they had a lot of collection areas where the water would flow through the roof and collect in the houses. They didn't really have that here because they actually had running water and sewers. And the tunnel system is underneath the streets here. This one's blocked off, but if you were to go down, you'd see all network of tunnels down there. This little area here is another outdoor restaurant. Well, it wouldn't be outdoors, it is now, but it would have been covered. You'd have all your various pots full of food and soups and dishes. So that's what a Roman restaurant used to look like. Peek my head into this building. Another big villa. And it does actually have the water collection up in the roof, so this one still does. It's a massive space. Herculaneum kitty. Although they've encased it in sort of a plexiglass to protect it, the original wood doors are preserved here from 2,000 years ago. And you can see this was a sliding sort of a divider to divide the room into separate spaces. So one nice thing about Herculaneum is that you can still find areas that have the original wood in place. So you can see what the doors and the beds look like, and I think there's a bed around the corner here too. And there it is, the platform of an original Roman bed. And I guess they'd use this as a sitting area to have conversations too, but it's kind of like a double-sized double bed. Be a little cozy if you had to put a second person in that. So when you're here and you look at the streets and inside the houses, you might think, boy, they're kind of uneven. But in fact, they would have been really level and very precise. It was the volcanic eruption and earthquakes that heaved these stones as you see them now. You can imagine just how perfect they would have been originally. So they have this system in place right now to keep the water out, because prior to excavation, this was actually a flooded area. So if they don't pump the water out consistently, it would fill back up again, as it would have been all those years ago. And they thought all the people escaped because they couldn't find any skeletons in the buildings, but it looks like they all came down by the water here, waiting for a boat, trying to get off, and unfortunately they never made it. Now these that you're looking at are in fact exact casts or replicas of what they found, but they're in the exact positions. Poor folks. So you get an idea. This was water that we're on right now, and all of that is volcanic debris right there. 60 feet plus of volcanic debris. And all these people were waiting in these sort of boat garages or little areas where they kept their boats, trying to stay safe. And this is where they met their end. You walk up the top from where the beach was, you have another villa up at the top with these great red columns.
What can you see here?
Can you imagine in the middle of your house if you had fresh water and all in here and flowers growing all around the outside? It'd be so pretty, wouldn't it? If you come to the wall, you can see where they've actually cut out probably some really elaborate image that used to be there. Those are all in like the Naples museums and other museums around the world, but this is where it came from. This is the original spot right here. If you peek through the window, another beautiful courtyard. I have to say, I like how the Romans would incorporate the outdoors with the indoors. I think I'd love to have an indoor courtyard like that. Plants growing in the house, fountains. Kind of sounds like a nice way to decorate. Another room down here. Marble, mosaic, and other stone. And still some remaining ceiling up top there. It's the first time I've seen some of the original ceiling. So one thing that's interesting about seeing where the plaster has fallen off is you can see the artist's original lines where they kind of laid out the framework for where they were going to do their painting, and then they'd add fresco, of course, layers and layers of fresh paint on undried plaster. But those are the lines that they would have scratched in to go, yep, this is the shape we're going to have, like the pencil lines. It's just neat how that little bit's fallen off and you're able to see that underneath. This villa has it's one of the rare third floors that you'll find here. Marble fountain, that would have been a well. But if you come and look, they've left a really beautiful fresco. See, this is tiled out at the end here. Look at that. How beautiful this would have been, and still is. So lots of beautiful things to see. And to think that the entire street here at one time would have just been lined in beautiful artwork, covered in stucco, painted, and there's very few bits of it remaining. If I hop down, which I will here, you can see behind me that they would have painted sort of columns and decoration and all these nice little details. So going for a walk anywhere in town would have been like going through a gallery every single day of the week. It would have been no boring trip to school for your kids. They would have had artwork to look at all the way. One thing that's kind of curious to point out, you've got the fountain, which we've seen here before. They would have had metal or iron poured in between the stones to keep them together. But if you look just opposite, you'll see there's remnants of original Roman pipes. Just like we'd have pipes in our house. They had plumbing up and down the walls. There's a bunch of plumbing that comes out of this building and kind of goes back and forth and then down. They had gutters. They had rain collection. And this was a blacksmith shop. So you can see the bits and pieces that they were working on. So if we look in front of us, you'll see it's an advertising sign for the store that was here, and they sold wine. So you've got the different types of wine you could choose from. And down below, it's advertising for the town of Nola, which had an amphitheater. So they're saying that if you want to go to the theater, you can go to Nola, and then if you want to buy your wine, you can do it right here. I'm gonna have to get a picture of that because that's pretty darn cool. Undiscovered ruins back there. Who's to say what they'd find if they kept digging, but they can't. Because somebody had to put their house up top. If you wonder what Roman jewelry looks like, well, there's a cameo, number 12. Kind of similar to a modern style cameo. This beaded necklace with glass and shells. Surprisingly delicate gold mesh fabric. And that would have been earrings that they found and rings. Very delicate little earrings. Love those bracelets with the snake's heads that interlock. The tongues are almost connecting. That's how you clasp it. That's really cool. Even look at that style of these bracelets. Sort of like a circular pearl looking gold necklaces with a decorative wheel, like a carriage wheel on it. And the detail's so fine, you'd think it was made in modern era. You know, all these artifacts, and the kids never had any toy cars to play with, not one single Hot Wheels found in ancient Herculaneum. What a shame. So a lot of these shops were for manufacturing or for clothes or for food. Apparently they used to use urine to get stains out of clothes. I asked what they used to get urine stains out. Didn't get an answer. But I'm not going to try that, don't worry. But it is quite amazing to stand here with my feet on the ground in the same place people did 2,000 years ago. A beautiful place to visit. If you haven't done so, you should come and visit Herculaneum and Pompeii. Pompeii is massive compared to this. Really, Pompeii is the one you want to go see. There is Vesuvius right there in the background. And surprisingly, lots of modern structures and buildings built right up to it. We've stopped kind of along the way. We're nearly at the museum now. People are getting off the coach to use the restroom. But I wanted to show you the most exotic temple-like McDonald's I've ever seen in my life here in Italy. Yeah, there's McDonald's here if you didn't know that. But look at that thing. It's got like a grand staircase going up to it and palm trees. If it wasn't named as a McDonald's, I think it's like a fancy restaurant, but we all know the food's probably about the same. Mind you, I don't know, maybe in Germany you can get beer at a McDonald's. Who knows what they have there? Maybe I'll have to poke my head in and see what the menu's like one of these days. We've arrived at the Naples Museum, this beautiful, huge structure. And our guide said it's a colorful area, and I thought, oh, it's going to be all these different color buildings. No, it's colorful in terms of there's lots of graffiti and stuff. It kind of reminds me of Manhattan if something really terrible had happened and they stopped maintaining the buildings. I don't mean that as any sort of disrespect to Naples, it's just my impression of it, but I think we're going to see a lot of amazing things indoors here. And just look at the size of this entrance. In we go. Now, I don't know what this neighborhood is like, but that guy up and he's got roller shutters on his windows. Like, who's gonna break in up there? Maybe somebody did, who knows? Walking into the main entrance of the Naples Museum, you can see there's several halls to the right, the center, and to the left. These great statues. I'm so excited to see all the bits and pieces that were saved from all these ruins been brought here. And they do ask you to check your backpack, so the rest of my group is doing that right now, checking their bags, and we'll get started. So the building itself, I'm told, was built in the 16th century as a military academy or school and used as a university for many years after. In the 1800s, they converted it into this museum when they started to excavate Pompeii and Herculaneum, which is why there's so many great artifacts. And in fact, it is one of the great museums to come and view these sorts of things in his home country and not far from the scene of the crime, you might say, Vesuvius being a short distance away. So if you see this mosaic here, you might wonder why would they have a mosaic of a dog? It would actually say beware of dog. So that's a warning. Others would be just beautiful sort of ornamentation as you walk in. These columns are beautiful with the tile work. If you look at the base, they've got seashells all along the base of it as decoration. If you look at the detail of the tile work, these are almost like micro mosaics or close to it. You can create these stunning works of art. That one's a little on the creepy side, the skeleton. Must have been just amazing to find these in Pompeii. Oh, this one is so cool. You've got the under the sea sort of motif here in tile with the fishes and the octopus and everything going on, such activity. What a cool scene that is. Cool picture. Almost all of the tile work you'd see in the museum here was excavated from Pompeii and saved. So when you go to the site, when you go to the historical buildings, you're not going to see a lot of the tile work that you see here. A lot of the amazing art was brought back and is on display here. So you really do have to see both to get the full picture. So in this case, they've actually found some bronze heaters. So that is like an interior heater, and it's got some pumice stone and stuff on the outside of it. And this is the base of a much larger heater, and it kind of looks like something almost you'd see in the 1900s, you know, like you put your wood burning stove on top of that, but much more ornate. The wing that I just exited, I can't even show you, because the ancient Romans were obsessed with phallic symbols, all sorts of artwork. Trust me, it's some pretty racy stuff. But it was seen as a symbol of prosperity, and originally Pompeii and Herculaneum had these large phalluses all over the place in stone, which when they discovered the site, they started lopping them all off because they were embarrassed of it. But they do have them on display. If you're so inclined, you can go have a look. Headed up the grand staircase to the second floor. A few different directions we can go. I'll wait until our guide comes and tells me which one they want us to go see first. It's a beautiful building. At one time, all these little tigers were part of a large fountain in Pompeii. They've saved all these ornate heads that are cast in bronze, stood the test of time. You can see there's lots of busts and statues. So when we were in Pompeii and we wondered what was standing on top of all those little squares of stone, there's much of this. Look at the size of this amphora. Obviously it's been reconstructed. Again, they had an earthquake just shortly before the volcano went off, so some of them were damaged, they've been pieced back together. Here's their medical devices. They had scalpels. I wouldn't want to have had that tapped into me. It sort of looks like forceps. Some of these look almost like they could be used in modern medicine.
So here you can see the
Musical instruments. Flutes and stringed instruments. So they tell me that item right there, it's quite mechanical and opens up and has spines. That's actually to aid in childbirth. So you imagine, it's like having a little jack for your car propped up down there. Don't think I'd want to be being involved with having a kid in Pompeii. And this tool next to it, you can see, looks like kind of long scissors. That is for if you're constipated, they would reach in with that thing and pull whatever if you're having a hard time getting out. So I don't think you'd want to go see the doctor anytime soon if you if you get to that point. I guess maybe you'd be willing up for anything. Probably a reason why they wore robes. So most of these items, they said, would have been door knockers or decorations that were on furniture, because most of the wood burnt up when Pompeii, of course, had the volcanic eruption. And what was left behind were all these little bronze details. You can just see how beautifully they adorned their furniture. It's just outstanding. These are bits of door handles and trunks and locks. You can see an ancient lock plate. And you've got the keys. Very complicated design. And there's one of the locks itself. In Pompeii, we were in a villa that had a black room with paintings, and they would have had these oil lamps that lit them to make them sort of flicker and shimmer. And these are the lamps. And they said there would have been sort of one workshop in Pompeii that specialized in making lamps. And you could have had all sorts of different styles, different types. You got a variety of them here. Some very simple and some very ornate. Here's some sort of typical household decorations that they'd have. So you've got the reclining lions and the frogs, reptiles and fishes. These would have just been inside your average home. It seems like if anything was sort of made of bronze, it really did survive. So you've got This ancient kind of cooking vessels. So a big pot for cooking. This is all cookware that they would have found. And you've got your pouring vessels over here. So tableware. So a little bit fancier because it's gonna sit on your table. Serving dishes. Look at the handles. And kind of looks like a muffin tin, doesn't it, over here? And these are still baking. So if you've ever seen like quite literally like a baking pan and a mold. So you could, you've seen cake molds or jello molds. They had them in Rome. Who knew? Again, for cooking, you've got the little divots so you can pour your, I imagine like your sauces and stuff out of there. Baking trays and so neat. Learning things every day. Had no idea that they had essentially muffin tins and jello molds. I know it wasn't jello, but still. They had molds. And aside from bronze, they did also make things out of fine silver. If you look at that, you wouldn't know that that's 2,000 years old because it's just so fine. Look at the detail on the handles. This could have been something your grandma had in her tea cabinet. You really start to get a sense of how advanced they were at that time. Indoor plumbing and nice silverware and high appreciation of art, all the tile work. So this fancy little object here is in fact the backside of a mirror. The other side would have had a mirrored glass surface and it's just so very ornate. I'm told that the spoons that we see in the case, like right there, weren't actually for eating with. They were for mixing water and wine because it was considered kind of vulgar just to drink water on its own. So they didn't eat with the spoons, they stirred with them. So there are still some glass containers that have survived the eruption. This one, which suspiciously kind of looks like a Noxzema bottle, actually did contain an oil that you'd put on your skin before you go outside. So I wonder if that's where they got the inspiration for that blue Noxzema bottle that I'm sure we've all seen over the years. But look at this, the fact that these things survived, these beautiful hand-blown glass pieces, just absolutely lovely. Look at the shimmering colors on that one too. Look at this wonderful cameo glass. And this was discovered in Pompeii with all this beautiful decoration all around it and this silver-footed stand that it's on. Can't imagine what that would have been like to dig through those ashes and rubble and find things like this as they were. And yeah, they even had regular glasses, like the type you'd get at a restaurant. Look at that. I feel like I've gone to a pizza place in Canada and had Coke out of a cup almost just like that. With these frescoes that are preserved, you can really get a sense of what the city looked like. Where the roofs were, how it was laid out. Luckily they took account of pretty much everything, but it gives a really great historical record of how they lived and what things should have been. They've built an exact replica of the layout of Pompeii. So you can imagine just how vast and how great this city was. Now, I went through the Grand Colosseum and kind of through these areas, but we didn't see pretty much all of that. I had no idea it was such a vast site. And still, there's quite a bit of it that hasn't been excavated, so I'm sure they're going to find all sorts of new treasures. Look at the vastness of this city. Makes you wonder what they're going to find in all the new spaces. They're going to need some new spots in the museum, new showcases, someone was saying. So this sort of 3D depiction on the wall shows the sites that have been excavated, and this whole area is still buried That's buried, that's all still buried. And we never did get to the big Colosseum, which would have been something to see. Apparently it's way on the other side. So when I did my video in Pompeii, I was really just in this one kind of little area. I'm so curious to know what's underneath all that. What great discoveries will be had. We'll have to stay tuned. Let's carry on. This fresco is kind of important because it's one of the earliest known images of Vesuvius before the eruptions. You can see it's a fertile mountain. There's trees all the way to the top. Now it's probably missing. That whole top part is gone. Kind of like the United States, how Mount St. Helens looks a lot different. That's what it looked like when they were living there. Just a big fertile mountain. Little did they know what they were set up next to. These residential frescoes kind of give us a snapshot of what life was like. So you can see they've got some depictions of their coins, maybe some scrolls that they were reading. But I like how the table set, they've got the eggs, they've got some birds perhaps they've caught that are gonna be made for dinner, utensils for stirring and serving wine, and fresh fruits and vegetables. Little bits of domestic life that without these frescoes being saved, you really have no idea how a lot of these objects were used, but some things aren't that different from today. And I love these frescoes with the chickens. I just think those are fantastic. They also would have had family portraits done, but because there wasn't cameras, of course, they would have them painted on the walls of their house. So here's a husband and wife, both scholars. She has a pen in her hand and he has the equivalent of what's a book today. You have another couple over here. This ancient fresco of Artemis kind of reminds me of the Statue of Liberty in a way, don't you think? Maybe it's just me. This piece is one of the only surviving pieces of nearly complete furniture that survived. You saw in the other showcases they had those little bits of bronze that had fallen off and burnt. So this is more of like a lock box or safety box. But there it is. It's got a boar's head on the top, right there. Figure heads. And cherubs. This is kind of a neat piece here. It's actually a hot water boiler made out of bronze, and it's like a big kettle. They shaped it like a defensive wall, and you could carry it around, but its intention was to heat up water, and then you could pour it right out that little spout there. Put your little teacup underneath. During the excavations, they actually found a villa that was still under construction and being painted, and these are the little, this is like your artist palettes, the cobalts, and then you got your pinks and sort of the chalk colors and charcoal. So this was like an artist palette of the Roman era. And of course, if you come to the museum, you've got to come upstairs and have a look at some of the gladiator helmets and daggers that they found. Absolutely stunning detail. Walk my way around the other side. You have to have a pretty strong neck to wear some of these things. Look at how detailed and ornate. Even a gladiator's helmets were decorated. You could be a gladiator wearing a gladiator, fighting a gladiator. We've been given a little time to walk around and maybe grab something to eat here at the museum before we head off to Herculaneum. But you really have to come to the museum in Naples if you really want to get the full picture of how the ancient Romans lived. It's one thing to go to Pompeii, which is amazing because you're in their actual homes and their actual businesses. But when you get here, you really see the artwork and how they decorate and how they lived. It's just phenomenal. As for me though, I'm gonna grab something at the cafe, meet them in front, and then we're off to Herculaneum right away. Hope you enjoyed this little trip, but let's keep going on to Herculaneum. If you ever see these sort of artifacts like the sarcophagus and it's sort of chiseled down, that's likely from grave robbers over the years who are trying to break their way into these tombs and sarcophagus to try and grab the jewels and things that people are buried with. Also, when you see statues, these ones are intact, but a lot of times they're missing their arms or their heads. It's because, if you're an invading soldier and you pass by and you have a sword attached to your hip, what's the first thing you do? You'd probably lop off an arm or a head, almost like practice or just for sport. But that's why so many of those statues are ruined. Usually soldiers passing through, having a bit of fun. You probably know this, most people probably do, but a lot of these statues were originally colored, and you can see she still has a bit of the coloring in her hair, kind of like a reddish brown hue. They would have been painted pretty well head to toe. You just sort of assume that they're intended to be white marble like this, but no, they would have been really colorful. And same with a lot of Egyptian statues too. Paint has just come off after years and years, but some that were found in this area still had some of the paint remaining. I don't know if you guys will find this interesting or not, but they're saying that the Egyptian collection is located downstairs on level -1. So instead of saying like lower level, they go -1. I thought that was kind of neat. I hadn't seen that too many places before. But guys, thanks again for watching these episodes. I hope that you've enjoyed them. Make sure to subscribe and we'll see you all soon. Bye for now.